going to. Good afternoon. This is Mohsen Ghoreishi with the KOHAN Group. I have here Morgan Davis with Blue Northern Builders.
Good afternoon.
We are waiting for our participants to actually enter the room. So maybe we should hold on a little bit. Oh, we got about 5 people so far. They just came in and they're coming in. So I'll hold on a bit until just about everybody is in. Yeah, they're just adding up, so that's good. Great. Yes. So again, my name is Mohsen Ghoreishi with the KOHAN Group. We are an architectural firm in the city of San Francisco, and our main focus is healthcare architecture and design, and we do a lot of dental offices and surgery centers and medical office facilities. And Morgan Davis with Blue Northern Builders, very reputable general contractor whom we've been working with for quite many years and have done some of the best projects in the Bay Area and some in Southern California. I know Morgan works, such as ourselves, we work, of course, nationally, but Morgan, what area do you work normally?
Yeah, we are based out of Northern California, cover all of California itself and Nevada as well. So that's, yeah, the complete states there.
So if you have anyone from Nevada, Morgan can help you. I know we took a trip to Vegas for a project with you. And so now that we introduce each other, we'll go and let's see here if we can go to the next slide. Morgan can be reached. You can look at Morgan's website at bluenorthern.com and of course reach him and he can answer all your questions after the meeting, or you can actually email your meetings to info@kohaninc.com, and we'll be able to distribute those questions, and or during the process of us talking to you, you can send chat or type your questions. We'll get the answers done. Today we're going to talk about, of course, few of items, especially post-COVID. How do you adapt your operations to match your existing practice? And that's been the biggest deal, and that's been the most amount of number of calls I have had. And I'm sure, Morgan, you have had that too as well.
Yeah, daily at this point.
Daily. Mm-hmm. And also, how do you adapt your practice to meet your patient's needs? And the patient's needs is not just coming to do elective surgery or to do a hygiene at the dental office or a dental work. It is the psychological part of it too, that post-COVID, everyone is so wary about it. And of course, I'm sorry, the construction cost is pretty important as well. And the timeline. Everyone asks me, Morgan, what's the construction cost is going to be post-COVID? And also the timeline, if the general contractors have nothing to do or they have a lot to do. So we're going to actually touch base on all of that in this webinar. Hopefully you'll get your answers today. This particular project, we worked on it. This is a project that I picked because it had pretty much all the elements of a typical dental office. This particular one has one closed operatory and several open, another closed operatory here, and several open operatory. And one of the questions we've been getting always is, seems like everybody want to close their operatories, Morgan. And if you look at this photo, these operatories are basically have a cabinet in between each chairs. And the question comes, can we enclose these operatories? The questions are about negative pressure. How do you filter the air? All kinds of questions, which will touch base on most all of it. But if you look at this one, and I know, Morgan, you had this issue where people ask you to basically close these operatories somehow or another, and you can elaborate on that if you want. But I found it that these may be very difficult to actually close.
Yeah, Definitely one point of discussion and one thing we've been focusing on projects with similar layout and situation is, like you mentioned, the question of how do you close it off. One of the first things that we're looking at that everybody's seeing, you know, in everyday life right now, going to the grocery stores and convenience stores, things like that, is the physical barriers. So that's one of the first things. And there are ways to create those physical barriers, but then there's also other challenges that we can dive into here in a little bit, with closing off the operatory completely to try to take advantage of the negative pressure rooms, which has been challenging, and incorporating some of the code requirements is what we look at, making sure that we still maintain code with these changes, but still improve the situation as far as airborne contaminants or contamination. So.
Okay. I know the aerosol is the biggest deal for dental offices. We don't have the same issue in the surgery centers. And I find it that the dental offices they have the biggest challenge on controlling the aerosol within their hygiene room, especially. And there are few ways to handle it, but in my opinion, it's quite difficult, and it's very, very difficult, and it's not 100%. But as far as airflow, we'll get into that. But when the aerosol, when you have aerosol, which you do in an operatory, of course, we recommend all the surfaces to be definitely changed in your existing practice. If you are having an existing practice, we recommend to change some of the floor materials, countertops, draperies, furniture that are fabric rather than leather. And those are the main items that we, on a short term, if you will, to change. For instance, this picture on the left, if you have an office that looks like that, I probably suggest, if I were a patient, psychological needs of a patient is that is very scary to the left, and the one to the right is very, very comfortable. So I think this is a revolution post-COVID for a lot of our dental offices and surgery centers to start cleaning up and changing some of their environment to really make it more comfortable, not to be pretty, but to be safe, if you will. And I think there's a cost associated with that. Morgan is going to touch base on that. So you can talk about some of these finishes Morgan I put here, like you know, censored faucets, and cost maybe for each of these things, maybe what they're looking at, and how easy is it to install any of these if they wanted to change it.
Yeah, the nice thing about some of the infrared units shown here, the faucets, soap dispensers, and things like that, most of them in today's market come with the battery option available, meaning that you do not need a power source underneath the cabinet sink, which is not set up for that most of the time, if it wasn't planned for. The cost for the battery operated units tend to be about the same as the low voltage units. Per a unit cost, and I think we have another slide that will break this down a little bit more, but roughly for some of these standard selections that our clients are choosing, you're talking between $500 to $1,000 per unit. Specifically, we're talking about the faucets and soap dispensers at this point.
So we recommend definitely to have a censored faucet and soap dispensers, because a lot of our clients, they eliminated the soap dispenser in their projects, and we recommend all touchless, whatever you can achieve to touchless, to do touchless work within the office. Now, are you talking about one of these $1,000? Like one of these Barbic?
Again, speaking general pricing in terms, a lot of them between 500 to 1,000. There are a lot of variations within that category that we're finding most clients are happy with.
And some of our clients, they're asking if, for instance, because the old technology was pretty bad and it was very difficult to actually take care of, because you would put your hand, it wouldn't come out, or it would be coming a little bit. Is this changed, or is this really problematic today?
I've heard a lot of that talk over the years. We have not experienced a lot of those problems and the discussions being different shadows or reflections, setting these units off. They've been extremely reliable as far as the hands-free operation.
And I can attest to that as well. But of course, one thing is about these things, it would be best not to have the standstill sink, which I understand there's a shadow comes in and this thing, you know, reflects lights, and it thinks you have a hand in front of it and it starts working. So it would be great to have a porcelain sink or a KOHAN sink such as this one, where it does not do the same. So these are some of the stuff we recommend. Of course, glass dividers are big deals between the operatories, of course. And also we have here old versus new. Of course, one of the offices we completed is they had a lot of carpets and doorknobs like that, and which is very hard to open with your arm, or you have to really use your hand to turn the knob. So we recommend, of course, to change the carpet and use maybe vinyl or composite vinyl tile, which they're very healthcare grade. They're great to use, and I know you have a number for the cost on those and how easy to install. I know in this picture we have ceramic tile, but if you were to do, I mean, if you were to compare installation of ceramic tile versus carpet and dollar amount, what would you guess?
Well, so the older rolled carpet, as indicated in this photo here, is pretty outdated. Carpets now in price comparison to vinyl planks, which we installed probably majority of our projects, is pretty comparable. So in comparing today's pricing between the products, vinyl planks being pretty comparable in price is usually, you can find great products. Most of our clients select and are happy with between that $3 to $6 a square foot price. That's material cost. So installed, and again, I have some notes here that will come up on the next slide. We're seeing prices between $8 to $20 a square foot installed. Now, so another thing to elaborate on with that installation of the existing office, Mohsen, and we haven't necessarily talked details today about this yet, but in coordinating an existing office in a time frame of this happening, it's relatively quick and easy. But if we're changing, say, the operatory rooms that are being worked in, there's the coordination of the equipment that needs to be removed and then reinstalled in situations like that. So those are detail that should be considered whenever you're looking at the schedule to get something like this done, because obviously that, more so than the actual cost of the flooring replacement, should be taken into consideration for a project like this.
Of course, I know in San Francisco we're still in stage 1, and no offices really are not supposed to be open except for emergencies. So this is a great time to do some of this work. But if you waited and once we are in stage 2 or 3, this could be done in phases, of course. And but definitely, if you have a pretty bad looking office, which especially you have one of some of those old carpets, or when you enter to the office smells and it just has that old odor to it, and then definitely you have to make some changes. So these dollar amounts you prepared here, this is for a short-term solution, which it talks about the carpet cost and countertops, partitions, plumbing fixtures, light switches, and basically, if you wanted to elaborate on that, I know you came up with these numbers for us, Morgan.
Yeah, in talking about these pricing, I'm sure everybody understands this is kind of just globally order of magnitude of what we're seeing. A lot of these final numbers is based upon 1,500 square foot. So to elaborate and on number 2 here, the countertops, some of the assumptions here is in an exam room, treatment room, or operatory room for some of the surgical suites. I'm assuming 1 to 2 cabinets of changing the countertops. Depending on the materials, it's probably between 500 to 1,500 on average. Some of these prices could be the starting point of entry to do something like this. So 1,500 square foot, roughly calculated some of, the quantity of countertops, adding something for like the sterilization in the lab area, in addition to maybe 4 operatories, approximately a point of entry point of about 21,000 to go to a nice solid surface top on cabinetry. So changing something like that out.
Yeah. So these dollars really, it changes depending on the spec, on what you put in. So I think there's a pretty wide range of what you can put in, but I know, and we can work with any of it. So if we were to come in, we would ask you just to send us a video of your office and maybe also a quick walkthrough of the office and maybe some photographs of each room. And if you have a floor plan or a rough floor plan or something like one of those fire maps that you put on your wall, if you could get that, we can examine what is it that you have, and we can guide you as how you can actually modify your existing practice to adapt it to the new requirements that you really then can work comfortably. I know your PPP is very important. You have all your gears, but I think that is wonderful, but still that physical environment, it becomes really important how to modify with minimum dollar amount to go through these times until hopefully we have some kind of a vaccine or something. But that's how we can help you as far as your HVAC system. If you give us a number on the HVAC system, we can check the model number, and our engineers can actually assess what you have. And with maybe one phone call with you or doing a Zoom meeting with you, we can really have a meeting and discuss your project and really help you to modify the office remotely with you. We can work that out. Morgan, I can help you with that. And so we were talking about HVAC system. The HEPA filter is a big conversation. It's a big topic these days. I get probably 10, 12 calls per day on air filtration, and HEPA filter is great. They come in different form or shapes. They come in hospital grade. We use it for hospitals, ORs, that kind of environment. We have HEPA filters that are a little bit more lighter as far as what they are able to do. It's complicated to explain all of those technology and mechanical engineering here, but normally most of them, they take 99.99% of 79% of the microbes and filter it out of the space, and that's what's so beautiful about HEPA filter. And but if you go to a negative pressure, which everybody asks me, by the way, I don't know if you've been asked about negative pressure. Have you?
That's the main question. I'm not sure everybody understands it. Hopefully we can elaborate on.
I think, that's I think one of the biggest topics, and that's one of the most expensive topics. And people really have gone out and purchased $100 to $150 these little small gadgets that actually filters the air, and it's got HEPA, but make sure it's a true HEPA filter. There are two different kinds on those. But the negative pressure is a big deal. You usually see it in the hospitals, where it's got a sign on it that says staff only, it's like quarantine room, what have you. That space requires certain engineering, and it's just not going to happen. And we'll be happy to help you with that. We have clients who actually are adamant about negative pressure. So that then one or two of their operatories that are actually closed, they have a swing door or actually a pocket door. They can close it, and we are doing negative pressure. But with that comes a lot of technical complexity, which we have to look and see if you really can do one of those or not. Oftentimes, you're not able to do it in an existing building. Moreover, I'm not quite sure if you really need it, because if you ever ask yourself, if I need a negative pressure, you have to ask yourself another question: what is the purpose of that? And if you can answer that, then yes, you can have a negative pressure. Now, these HEPA filters come with UV light, which they're great. And if you do have a negative pressure, you need a welded. I know the cost on that is pretty expensive, right? For the pressure that it takes.
Yeah, for the existing systems in place for a lot of the offices that are already set up, modifying can get quite costly. The HVAC unit itself, to elaborate a little bit on the filtration system, most HVAC units have the filter built into the unit itself. That's going to be your basic setup, and that's where you'd find a filter. Upgrading to a HEPA filter, we've experienced some of the units that were being requested to upgrade filters on. cannot even accommodate the larger or the thicker HEPA filter. So modifying that system or replacing the HVAC system is something that will need to be looked at. And that's where it gets costly. Roughly speaking, I usually tell our clients just to, again, give an order of magnitude on an HVAC unit. Most of the offices, again, for the 1,500 square foot to 2,000 square foot office that we're referencing today, has a unit that costs about $2,000 to $2,500 per a ton. So this size of an office, for reference, that's about 4 or 5 ton unit. So doing the quick numbers, you can get an idea of what we're talking about, anywhere from the low side, maybe 8,000 to probably 15,000 just to replace a unit. Now, the great opportunity in replacing unit is to be able to size and accommodate, get the HEPA filter in, and then for air exchanges also is another important discussion that can be drilled down on. Getting the proper air exchanges into some of these negative pressure rooms is something that's considered whenever we're following the guidelines for the cleaner rooms. So again, the existing office situation could be pretty costly, whereas going into new construction and just spending a little bit more money, if you're already planning to do a project where you have to add an HVAC unit, spending the money for the small upgrade now could be relatively minimal for new construction cost. You know, maybe a couple $1,000 of an upgrade on a unit that's already being purchased anyways. So
yeah, we have a few projects that actually we are re-engineering their HVAC system to remove the typical HVAC system we put for practices and put a HEPA filtered HVAC system, which we recommend at this time. If there is a brand new building, I think we would suggest not only one, but all of the units to be HEPA filtered. That way, throughout the entire office, you have clean air. And so this is, for example, this office, we designed it for a client in Daly City, and Morgan built it wonderfully. For instance, this project has got its own issues as far as we can't really do any accessibility to the ceiling. If you see, ceiling is all drywall, and these are the air conditioning registers, supply airs. This access, changing some of the ductwork would be horrendous work. It is impossible. It's just not feasible. So we don't really recommend to do that. So the only way we see this, if ever this particular client wanted to add a HEPA filter, not a negative pressure room, would be recommended to change the unit or adapt the HEPA filter to it. And this is the floor plan for a partial floor plan for this particular project. And there's a corridor leading to this particular procedure room. He does implants in this room. This room has a barn door, which has got a lot of leak, meaning if you do this negative pressure in this room, because the way the doors are, the air is pushed inside in this room, and because of those leaks, you couldn't really control and maintain the pressure that is required to be a negative pressure. So it is important how the actual rooms are and what are the door systems on the rooms are. I'm sorry, and the corridors, of course, if you see, is open here on these cabinets, and therefore on some of the other operatories, these cabinetry at 12 o'clock, they're all open above them. So there's no way you could do negative pressure in any of these. So we recommend complete air change within the entire space. And that way.
I'm sorry, on your diagram here, just elaborated, I believe the blue arrows are indicating a room that has positive pressure, and then the red circular arrow is the negative pressure room.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, that's the idea here. So there is, this is another project. We just wanted to bring a few different projects so people can look at it, because there are some people who are in worse shape than others or better shape than others on this one. And then my next question is why everybody want to close their operatories, because and I think the reason, maybe I wish we could actually see somebody would respond to that, but the point is, if why would you want to close the operatory? Why would you, somebody in fact asked, why would I need a negative pressure in a dental clinic? And also, what are your thoughts about VCT, vertical composite tile, which is great, by the way. You don't really need a negative pressure in an operatory. We don't really think you need it. So that's the answer to your question. But the reason we're talking about it is because people have been speaking about it. And they want it because they heard something, because they've seen contagious diseases are being kept in a room that is tight, enclosed, and they want to have one of those. But that goes back to your operation, and it doesn't work like that in a dental office.
Also, to elaborate on that, I believe some of the guidelines that I followed on some of the surgery centers and surgical suites that we've done, the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development, which is commonly referred to as OSHPD, there are different stages of those. Some of the community clinics that we've done dental suites in do have to follow the OSHPD 3 guidelines. And the difference between their definition of an exam room to a treatment room to a surgical suite is where the difference lies in the need for a negative to a positive pressure. So whenever you're going into a treatment room or a surgical suite, that's where it's looked at, requiring that negative pressure to really control the contaminants floating around those suites themselves. So the idea behind it is to prevent aerosols from escaping the room. So that negative pressure keeps those in those suites themselves.
Yes, and of course, the aerosols, just when it deploys in the air, they land on the surfaces.
Yeah.
But then what does not land, of course, or what can be taken through the negative pressure or positive pressure, if you will, it goes through the HEPA filter, it circulates in the system and comes back in. So, so this is an example of it being like, how do you enclose this operatory, or these operatories are all open when you see, but my question is, how much aerosol can exit these rooms? You know, what do you think, how far an aerosol goes out of the rooms? 10 foot, 8 foot? And I think, I'm not sure if really is necessary, but if you have anything curved like that and you really want to enclose it, you can use materials like 3-form, which is a resin material, and it comes in half an inch, 2 inch thick. And we've done it before. It can be curved and it can slide, and it can be inside a pocket door or a barn door, and actually you can actually enclose any number of curved walls you may have. But as far as aerosol, I think your surfaces are mostly what you need to really be worried about, rather than it exiting the room. Pathogens and other microbes, of course, can be taken care of through the HEPA filter, if you will, in a dental office. This one I just wanted in, and this is an OR. This is a surgery center. I put this in if you have any surgeon today on board on this webinar. I think I've shown this particular slides before, but this normally we do have negative pressure in the OR, and of course the soil room and some of the corridors in the waiting area. But in the rest of the area, we have positive pressure. That way we can actually take the microbes and pathogens and keep this room very clean. And of course, it's not because we have somebody who is, is infected with contagious diseases. It's not that. It's just that we keep the space very clean and have clean air, almost without any microbes. So that's why we do that here. Like Morgan mentioned, OSHPD 3, if you will, or this is a 23-hour stay, so we're not doing OSHPD on this particular one at all. But we do definitely negative pressure in an OR. So your procedure room, you may want to get a negative pressure if that is possible. This is a diagram. I created that. That would be an OR or a exam room or an operatory, where actually if you would have a negative pressure, and This normally they're about 10 air change to 12, and we go up to about 18 to 20. This is an existing unit. If you could adapt the HEPA, we would like to do that. And usually air comes in with a certain speed, and you exit or the return air would be about 10% more. That's how you make the room negative pressure. Just wanted to show you that. This is a little bit of, if you want to take a photo of this slide, this one, we do this normally for the ORs about 15, 20 by 20, about 400 square foot. We put about 1200 CFM, a dedicated air conditioning system in there. And that's how we create that negative pressure plus a pressure monitor to monitor the pressure of this room. That is for our surgeons. And if you are having a procedure room that you'd like to actually make a negative pressure, this is and that is if Morgan, we can, in fact, if there is an existing unit and we can adapt the HEPA filter, we will, otherwise we'll get a new unit and dedicate it to that particular room. Now, the complexity of this would be if you can do the ductwork to actually maintain the pressure and be able to handle it in an existing environment, right?
Yeah, correct. Some of our larger operating rooms, well, in the dental, if you're looking at a larger suite of 12 by 12, then compared to this operating room of the 20 by 20, the room itself typically has a separate unit, dedicated unit, or we go in and install a separate unit, in which case we can size appropriately for the room. And the duct size, it's important to, in a new install application, we design and engineer the duct sizing to allow that amount of CFM that's needed for those air exchanges, as well as if the duct size is too small in a retrofit situation, especially if somebody's just to upgrade the unit without changing the ducting, it creates a static pressure in the ducts themselves, which equates to, for us, noise, the loud air blowing sound that a lot of people have probably heard. So that's what that the smaller ducts cause if it's not done correctly.
That's correct. Yeah, the noise is going to become a factor when you do retrofit an existing space. This is another suggestion we have on the actual entire. If we were to have a 1,500 square foot or 1,000 square foot or a dedicated area, a pod, if you will, of a larger practice we wanted to do to change the airflow, this would be a pretty good example of how the diagram works, if you will. Where we actually can take the entire office, entire practice, to have the airflow with the higher airflow, the number of airflow, or let's say 12 airflow per hour, of course, and with a HEPA filter, of course. So we can change the unit that you have in your existing building and install a HEPA filter and basically use the same ductwork, if you will, and give you the airflow you need.
Yeah, that's if the HEPA filter will fit up in that unit.
Well, if not, just change the unit.
Yeah.
Simply, probably even sometimes it even makes sense to just go ahead and change the unit, depending on how old or efficient it is, and just have a whole brand new unit and replace it and use the existing ductwork and just introduce great airflow and clean air into the entire practice. This one is a diagram I created because I thought this would help for people who have existing unit, but they need to, let's say you had a procedure room or exam room that you want to make a negative pressure, but you can't do much with it. But then again, we recommend to have a HEPA filter at the supply and return air register. If you look up in your ceiling, you'll have a supply air and a return air. And how hard is it to install these HEPAs above the ceiling, Morgan? You want to go over the technicality of it a little bit?
Yeah, so in a project where we have acoustical ceilings throughout, it is relatively easy. It does take a little bit of time for the labor crew to do it, and talking about within a day. But in an accessible acoustical ceiling, that's what's great about those ceilings is the accessibility of it. It can be done at the duct, and there's another diagram that we'll take a look at that shows those being installed in the ceiling. In a sheetrock ceiling, some of the higher end projects that we've done over the years, it makes it a lot more challenging. And at this point, that is some of the challenges we're looking at with some of the past projects of how we would change those out. Because that's a great diagram right here. If you can imagine, I mean, there's a booster fan in this scenario, because of an existing system. A lot of times the HEPA filter causes the restriction of the air more so than not having it. So a booster fan is often needed in that situation. So this unit in this picture has that built in and integrated. That component needs accessibility. So in a sheetrock ceiling, it becomes a lot more challenging. So the cost, whenever it's more challenging, is where you see that jump up quite a bit.
So it's important to have that access above the ceiling to actually install one of these, first of all.
Install and service as well. The filters themselves, as shown in this picture here, is done from down within the room.
Right.
Itself. So that's
you change it from below.
Correct. And it's also important to probably mention that the filters themselves should be replaced on a regular basis. Recommended at a minimum every 3 months or so, depending on usage, obviously. But and so that's another factor as far as the cost of the office. If you have this,
how much would be one of these, Morgan? Approximately.
The filter or the unit itself?
The entire contraption that you have to install.
To do an office, typically you're looking at 2 points: the supply and the return. And with the unit itself and installed, it's probably around $2,000 to $2,500.
So each of these, or both of them?
Both of them to do the room, to the setup like that. Now there are different bells and whistles that can come along with that. With the different controls, and as you have in your picture here, the pressure monitor to automate the process, and that price would go up from there. So to do a basic swap out to get the HEPA filter in the ceilings without going up into the unit and changing that's what I'm referring to. Probably around $2,000.
Just each for the HEPAs?
Say per an operatory or a treatment.
So I know we got this for a client, and this was about $2,000 pressure, and we put it on one procedure room to create that negative pressure the client required. But then I assume these booster fans start making some noises, I would assume. And also, do we need to change this ductwork to?
It would be recommended if to truly get the air exchanges that you need, you would, on most offices, I think probably most of the doctors here today are built into an existing building that is maybe not necessarily built for medical and dental. It's not a hospital.
That's right.
I'm assuming.
It's like you go and get a suite somewhere in an office building, and you start making it.
It could be a medical building, it could be a retail suite, but it probably was not built to accommodate the higher CFM now that we're looking at to achieve these air exchanges.
And in fact, new offices we don't really do well with ductwork because we never really wanted to get any negative pressure in the past until COVID really rose those questions, right?
Yeah, correct. It wasn't looked at like it is today. In the past, looking at increasing units was strictly usually a conversation we had because of the heat. Not so much in San Francisco maybe, but and around some of the Bay Area, but Nevada, Central Valley, California. We, as far as our experience with medical and dental, we've always recommended larger units, in which case at this point, going back and retrofitting those larger units for our clients that went with that is easier than if you went into a retail space that already has the HVAC. It's probably undersized to do what we're talking about today. So whenever we're talking about price and cost to build, which we'll touch on a little bit, it's important to understand the difference of the bare minimum, which can still be done, but to accommodate some of these items now today that we're looking at, that's where you see pretty substantial increases.
Yes. Very good. So
here's a good question that popped up from Dr. Chin, I believe. As far as the gowns and changing of the gowns within the operatories, one of the, again, going back to the OSHPD requirements of surgical suites in hospitals, there's usually an intermediate area, and we might have some MDs online today. There's usually an intermediate area.
There's an anteroom.
Exactly, for changing those gowns.
Yeah, I had a diagram. I removed it. There's an anteroom. You put it in between the exterior corridor and the actual OR or the area that the infected patient is. You're right. Sorry. Go ahead.
So as far as changing in the operatories or stripping down the gowns in the operatories, I have not seen our clients going to that point. But I have. What's that?
I have seen one of our clients actually, what he did, and responding to Dr. Chen as well, one of our clients did use the consult room.
Yeah.
And so the operation, the very first thing we start talking about, the consult room, they start because they needed to get rid of these gowns, the soiled gowns. So that room becomes basically, you have bins that are for soiled bins. And they use the consult room in the meantime at this time for disposing the gowns. But then, go ahead.
So that is, and what I was also going to mention is a lot of our offices under construction, even we're going back and modifying to be able to accommodate the washer dryer and gown room. It's just a small changing room. So it's been extremely difficult to try to improve upon, a process to put it into each, say, operatory at this stage, unless we are already looking at a hospital or something more stringent.
We never really looked at a dental office, if you will, to have the anteroom or to have a particular dedicated room for that. And that's a whole new. So if you're having a brand new building and you are not built yet, maybe it would be a good time to take a look at it, see how your operations is going to match your new operations, right, Morgan?
Yeah.
To match the actual physical environment. Now, I know everyone has the gown and the all the gears and everything, but then the question came up, what do you do? When the patient comes into the practice, you have to assume that patient is infected. Basically, that's why everybody is talking about negative pressure or HEPA filter and all that stuff. So when a patient walks into a practice, you have to assume today, with not having a vaccine available, that the patient is infected. And how do you treat that patient? So the basic idea is to make sure everything touchless and the appointments are not overlapping. So you don't really have anybody in the waiting room and you just take people right straight to the exam room or the operatory. And when you go to that operatory, when you have all your gowns, when you exit, you can't go to the next operatory with the same gown. If I am your patient, I'll watch you to see if actually you're coming from the next operatory to the operatory I'm in for you to treat me. If you do that, that's a no-no, because then I'm really scared you're going to infect me because the next door room patient may have been infected. So how you actually move from one operatory to another, it's very important. So that impacts your operation. How do you dispose those guns? So when you go to an operatory or exam room, and everything you're wearing belongs to that one patient and only that one patient. We designed few dental offices that the doctors practice one patient at a time. So for them, it doesn't make a difference. It's amazing. But most of our dentists, they do 4 or 5 patients at a time, right? And also they go one operatory to another and they wear their normal, coats and everything like the old days. And you have to get rid of that, and the gowns are important. So working with the gowns and how you dispose of them, I think you need to have a pretty big bin, because you need to go to a room to dispose it and again put on your new gowns, and it has to be separated, the soil room and a clean room. Now I know in the sterilization area we have dirty to clean and all of that stuff. That's the old-fashioned way. New way, then now you have to have a soil room separate from the clean room, and when in the soil room you dispose of the gown, in the clean room you gown up and you go to the next operatory or the exam room. So it is really important how you modify your existing space or what you have right now to how you are going to be working when you go back to work. This one is for our surgeons, of course, when you have an OR, or if you have a very sophisticated, this is a dedicated unit, negative pressure for an OR. I put that in here. These are very expensive units. They got double tunnels. The engineering and mechanical engineering on these are very complicated. The total air change is almost twice as much as a typical room, which is 10 versus 20. And I guess that's very typical. I just want to tell you that if you are talking about the HEPA filter unit, they come in various different brands and models. And this one is very different from the one we're talking about, the dentist's OR or procedure rooms. And this beauty, this beauty here is for the ones that they like to do a portable one. So literally the air goes in here, and basically this one is good, almost one of the better ones. It has its own exhaust, dedicated exhaust, and it has to exhaust not into the sidewalk, by the way. So
I've looked at a lot of these recently. Doctors have been just sending me a bunch of text and emails questioning about these for the air scrubbers. You know, the ones that are also right at the mouth. Most of them
that's right.
Most of
for
them,
the aerosol, you mean?
Yeah, for controlling the aerosols. Most of them that I've seen have a 4-inch exhaust line. The marketing material that I've read on, a lot of them do say that it can be ducted outside. In reality, the challenge of ducting one of these outside is pretty costly because as you combine the 4-inch, you need to get the exhaust line gets larger and larger. And the point I wanted to make was, if you're trying to utilize these air scrubbers as the solution, I don't think they're great, and I believe that they do their job, but I don't think any one of these options is going to be the fix-all.
I agree.
And building the infrastructure to make these work at the patient side at every unit is challenging. Which, if it's not exhausting outside, you're left to the means of the filter within the unit, the UV light, which disinfects at the filtration unit, just at the unit, and it needs to be maintained.
Yeah, the exhaust would be a pretty big deal in just about most buildings.
The other challenge that we're faced with, and all of us are faced with, I think, in trying to improve this process, in all the literature that I've read about these items, including some of the discussions that we're talking about with the HEPA filter, is a lot of it, or I don't know any of it, that has been proven for the COVID virus, as far as killing that virus. So,
okay.
Just trying to improve the air, improve the process, which leads us to this ionization unit that we've looked at for various projects. This technology has been around for several years. The idea here, and there's a bunch of different brands out there, is that this ionization module gets installed in the HVAC unit itself, and it creates a negative charge ion. And most of the airborne pollutants, primarily it's been, in the past focused on for odors and air pollutants, but it's also been proven to bring down viruses and other bacteria. So a negative charge is created in the air that is then distributed through the HVAC system. Those negative charge ions collect what's typically a positively charged bacteria or pollutant in the air, and it brings it down to the surface. So you can see in this diagram here, by combining, it creates more mass, which brings it down to the surface, which is even more of a reason to make sure that you have good materials and hard surfaces to be able to still clean up and sterilize it, because it doesn't make it go away, it just brings it down out of the air.
Speaking of cleaning, also the question came out when you do the operations. Of course, this one is very good, of course, but then when these things land on the surface, you have to, sanitize and clean. So the less on the surfaces, the better and easier to wipe off.
Yeah.
And also, if your patients go, by the way, in the middle of it all, go to the bathroom, you need to follow back, and when they leave, sanitize behind them, because you don't know what they have done in the bathroom, what they've touched, what they haven't touched. And of course, every accessories in the bathroom would be touchless, hopefully. So you have them touch the least amount possible. But this is a great solution for pushing the aerosol down to the floor and surfaces, of course. And few of the questions, Morgan, that I received from our new projects that I get from the clients every day is, what is the cost? Are you charging a lot less because post-COVID, or are you charging a lot more? What is the status of construction schedule and prices, if you will, because everybody is worried, nobody's making any money during COVID, and they feel like, okay, now the cost has gone down. So can you give us a little bit of feedback? I know we have some numbers here, but go ahead.
Well, taking the information from the earlier slide about a light remodel, this is purely just to improve physical barriers, the surfaces, flooring, and countertops, like we talked about, using those numbers for that 1,500 square foot or average size office. It tends to run around that $18 to $50 a square foot, depending on to what extreme, and those other variables we talked about. Tenant improvement starting, this is the big trick question, or the most common question that we're all asked. And it varies across, because we do build across a rather large area. There's a huge deviation of that price from up and down California. If you get close to the Bay, it tends to go up quite a bit. And in the Nevada area, Las Vegas, and Las Vegas seems to be a little bit on the lower side. But generally speaking, and this, I say, it's a trick question, because it is most important to define what we're talking about. I know that there are people out there today that say, they can build it for $140, $150 a square foot. If you really break down and dissect that, it's probably missing stuff. And
thank you.
What we are seeing as a starting point of construction costs is $175 to $250 a square foot. And that is your point of entry. We've done fairly high-end projects that the price goes up from there. Some of the pictures of these projects that you've seen, nicer finishes, the ceramic tiles, the higher-end cabinetry and things like that. Cabinetry, as if anybody's been through this process, can contest to, is a larger dollar price or budget portion of the project.
So this price here does not reflect any cabinetry cost, any of the fire alarm system cost, any of the other soft costs, permit costs, all the architectural engineering costs. This is just purely brick and mortar, right?
Correct. And that's the catch, and why I say it's important to define. And one thing that's most important for us when we're sitting down with the client is to go through item by item, to know what you're looking at. Because I can get the question, does it include cabinets? And our response typically is, well, how much cabinets do you want? If cabinetry could be just at the front reception, and then in the lab for a dental office setup, and then maybe it's the equipment that's everywhere else, or if that's custom built, that's a huge variant on this price per square foot that we're talking about.
Yeah, and so we get, I'm sure those questions come to you the same as, of course, my office here, where, okay, what's the cost per square foot? And when somebody, in fact, in one of the forums on Facebook, I saw somebody ask, one of the doctors ask, what does it cost per square foot in Southern California and in Seattle? And I don't know the answer. Please, somebody answer me. And somebody answered $145 in Southern California. And I was like, okay, first of all, I think you have to ask the right question, because asking how much it costs right here, if somebody asks me right now, is like, it's going to be the same way if I pick up the phone and call you on the phone and say, my tooth number X is aching, and how much do you charge me to fix it? Without you looking at it, without you examining it. So point I'm making is, the question is a wrong question. It is a lot of variables. When you come to us, we need to probably guide you to get to the right dollar per square foot and find the appropriate or realistic cost per square foot, because we will consider what is it that you're after, how high, how low, how medium, what are the finishes, and then we get an overall understanding of what the cost per square foot would be. We will discuss it with Morgan. We look at the site itself, the complexity of construction of the site, and then we will come up with somewhat realistic budget within 10 to 15% up and down. Try to get you a price where we can maintain that price through design. And we will consult with Morgan to make sure he looks at the drawings back and forth. We go back and forth to make sure we are actually staying in that budget. So when time comes to the end of the drawings, when we have specified just about everything, the price is still about 10% in that area of range of what we have begun, lower or higher. But just go out and answer $140, $150 per square foot. It's a mistake, and you cannot really hang your hat on that. You have to really be a lot more mindful. So with the cost per square foot, cabinetry, fire alarm system, internet and IT solutions is not included. Architectural engineering fees aren't included. Permit fees, infrastructure such as water, sewage, if it's a brand new building, right? Geotechnical studies, soil study, which is soil study, of course, structural drawings. These are, if it's brand new, if it's not, well, you don't have some of those. The point is, even if you have a 1,500 square feet unit and you don't know if it needs a structural drawings, because if there is a structural issues, construction cost goes up. And if there are different, more higher expensive finishes, the construction goes up. So as far as the ground up or shell, I guess you have here starting from 250. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
250 to 350, and the also important item to recognize for both the tenant improvement costs that we're talking about and the shell starting costs. Economy of scale plays a huge factor in it. So in these numbers, what we're talking about is based upon our typical clients of, if we're doing a shell, a lot of times our standard building size is probably close to the 4,000 to 6,000 square foot, depending on if the client or the office is going to occupy the entire building or not. So the larger the square footage, the lower the cost per square foot. So as a basis for these discussions and this pricing, these are based upon that average size of a 4,000 to 6,000 square foot shell.
And also the exterior finishes, right?
Yeah, and again, that's point of entry. So those are your standard finishes of a stucco finish, nice, standard commercial grade windows and things like that. So the price definitely goes up. We've got a lot of higher end projects going right now to where we have stone facade, a lot of fancy upgraded metals on the exterior. Those increase this cost. But regardless of who's building it, that's what I want to stress is the most important thing is to make sure that those things are all outlined and not to blindly go in and think you're going to spend $250 a square foot and get whatever you want. The details are extremely important because that will vary.
How's your schedule works, Morgan, for post-COVID? I mean, what are the issues now? I know the cities are closed and you can't get a lot of inspections. I don't know if you have kept all your staff on board during COVID, and let's say you have a project you want to start, or a few people want to come to you for, or we want to give you a project for you to build it. How does your schedule work, and how are you adapting to, or how can you actually provide your services to people who want to build, or is anything changed?
It has been a roller coaster day by day because our typical process is we've got several projects going on at all times, from first initial conversations of space planning and design and first site inspections and through the entire construction process to wrapping up the projects. So what's happened over these past couple months is that normal process that usually is flowing very well, the new incoming or projects in construction specifically around the Bay Area, we've had a fair amount of them actually stopped. Central Valley, they allowed building permits here. Sacramento Placer County area continued to do inspections remotely, and those progressed as we got into the Bay Area. Those inspections and construction completely shut down, as many of the commercial businesses out there, as we know. So that roller coaster, it actually, some of them stopped, talked about starting back up, and then stopped, and then started back up again. The startup in these last phase that opened back up is kind of been an unknown on how the building departments are going to respond and open back up. For instance, while we had 9 projects stop in the Bay Area, some of them were allowed to start back up, but fire departments were still not inspecting or scheduling inspections until just yesterday. So they're slowly starting back up. The common misconception or phone calls that I've been getting is the expectation that because we know the market took a hit in the last couple months, and there's fears of what's going to be forecasted for the future. The misconception has been that the cost is substantially going to drop, or getting calls that construction's, they assume that it's costing less. When in reality, we had a temporary pause on all the projects we have, and they're now all starting back up at once. And while we still had projects coming in during the stop, let's say, those that were comfortable enough to still proceed on projects, we weren't starting those until just right now. So it's created a little bit of a backlog. So opposite of everybody's perception, it seems, which I do think over these next couple of weeks is going to work out and pan out. And, you know, all businesses, employees coming back to work, for those who were working remotely or temporarily laid off, I think it's going to equalize here in the next few weeks. But I'm not foreseeing, at least for our workload, a significant slowdown. It's, if anything, with all these changes that everybody's wanting to do, it's going to keep us, and I think the construction industry, pretty busy, especially for these critical offices, the medical, maybe more on the medical side, that have continued to build.
There was thank you, Morgan. There was a question chat regarding the air handler, the air dryers in the bathroom, in the toilets, that they may not be safe because they actually move the air within the space. And you know, we all have had issues and questions about using those Tyson or any of those automatic hand dryers. I personally prefer the napkin because I know every one of us, or whoever is leaving the toilet, they like to open that lever with a napkin, and then when they open it, they throw it away. Some of our projects do not have paper towel and or they are all with a dryer, and I recommend these days definitely you can have both, but I understand they may not be as safe. Definitely they move the air within the space. But remember, there's that one person in the space. And now if you go to a public bathroom where there are several people, and you normally see those air, you know, dryers, hand dryers there, yes, that is definitely not safe post-COVID. But I certainly recommend in a single stall toilet, you could have one of those. Because hoping that after the patient leaves, you can actually sanitize that toilet before the next person walks in and make it safe for the next person. But I think always a paper towel is a great solution for most people because everyone uses it, and a very handy close by trash can where once they open the door, they can throw it in the trash can and leave rather than on the floor or throw it. So that was a question that was asked. And I wanted to discuss that, and I wanted to show some of the other work we've done together with Morgan. This is a orthodontics office, and some of the pediatric offices look like that, and that's why we have this glass wall showing that separation is possible. Oh, this is automatically is going for still. So we're showing some of our work that we did. Use of glass has been really great, helpful, and of course composite vinyl tile, which is easily sanitizable, cleanable,
VCT, while these roll through, we had a question about VCT earlier.
Yes.
It's same product as far as durability and material. VCT or luxury LVP, luxury vinyl plank. The plank or the tiles
Yes.
are pretty similar in nature.
Yeah.
It's the same for durability, easily wipeable. Those are, the planks or the squares are butt together and common in these medical offices.
And the surfaces, as you see, these are all KOHAN again. Of course, this furniture was selected pre-COVID. We recommended those to be changed to leather so it can be easily wiped. But we're hoping nobody sits on them during COVID and everybody goes straight to the operatory, if you will. And these are this is all ceramic tile flooring here, of course. And everything is touchless, everything is censored. Literally, patient should not touch anything. And this is pretty much our presentation. Morgan, anything you want to say?
We covered quite a bit. I'm sure if anybody has any questions, happy to follow up with those with you, Mohsen.
Okay, please send your questions to info@kohaninc.com. Go to our website, www.kohaninc.com or bluenortherns.com. Contact with Morgan. We'll be happy to respond to any of the questions you may have. It's great having you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Thank you. This is the end of our webinar. Bye-bye.